Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elron.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Iran has hacked the blueprints of Israeli submarines. A former member of the Israeli parliament dropped a huge bombshell when he revealed that Iran stole the specifications of submarines built for Israel by a German company. The German heavy industry giant ThyssenKrupp reported that it had fallen victim to a cyber attack in 2016 and that company secrets had been compromised. At the time, Israel believed that the plans for its submarines remained secure. However, former member of Knesset Errol Margalit said he is convinced that Israeli intel was in fact exposed. Margalit said the shipyard that is building the Israeli vessels in Kiel, Germany, is owned by the family of a former Lebanese defense minister who is known to have ties to Iran. It was also disclosed that an Iranian foreign investment company owns a 4.5% stake in ThyssenKrupp. Margalit is certain that the blueprints of Israel's submarines are in the hands of the rogue Islamic Republic.
An Israeli man was murdered last week by a Palestinian terrorist in the northern city of Ariel. The 29-year-old father of four was stabbed multiple times in the chest and the back by the terrorist, who evaded capture and fled the scene. In related news, the terrorist mastermind behind the vicious murder of an Israeli father of six has been eliminated. After a month-long manhunt, the murderer confronted IDF forces armed with an assault rifle and explosives. He was killed in the ensuing shootout. Israel's defense minister Avigdor Lieberman praised the IDF, Shin Bet, and the Israeli police for the operation, and he assured the public that it's only a matter of time until the terrorist responsible for this latest attack is also captured.
Iran is financing the Hamas terrorist organization to the tune of $100 million a year. U.S. President Donald Trump's envoy to the Middle East, Jason Greenblatt, blasted the hardline Islamic Republic for funding Hamas, and he condemned Hamas for using the money for terror. Greenblatt recently toured a series of tunnels along the Gaza border and expressed his frustration with the investment in terror instead of infrastructure. He stressed that Tehran spends almost $1 billion a year sponsoring terrorism in Lebanon and Israel. He pointed out that this blood money only increases violence and does nothing to help the Palestinian people.
The Syrian military has reportedly deployed toxic gas against civilians. The U.S. State Department said that it is greatly alarmed over reports of renewed chemical attacks in the war-torn country. It says that there is evidence of at least 6 chlorine gas attacks over the past 30 days. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said that dozens of civilians were treated for suffocation after a foul-smelling gas was released by Syrian helicopters last week. This is the latest in a series of chemical attacks by the Assad regime. Last month, 21 people were hospitalized with respiratory problems after the Syrian army fired rockets on a rebel stronghold outside of Damascus.
Jerusalem and Cairo have teamed up to fight ISIS. The New York Times reported that Israel was granted permission by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to strike Islamic State targets in the Sinai Peninsula. The Times story said the Egyptian army focused on combating ISIS in the cities, while the Israeli Air Force hit the terror group in the desert more than 100 times in 2 years. The Ministries of Defense for Egypt and Israel refused to comment on the article. This development, though, marks an unprecedented level of cooperation between the two countries.
In his historic State of the Union address, President Trump expressed his pride in the decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and his disappointment in the countries that opposed him. He said that shortly after his announcement, dozens of countries voted in the United Nations General Assembly against the decision.
In 2016, American taxpayers generously sent those same countries more than $20 billion in aid. That is why tonight I am asking Congress to pass legislation to help ensure American foreign assistance dollars always serve American interests and only go to friends of America, not enemies of America.
The Polish and Israeli governments have found themselves at odds over Warsaw's passing of legislation which makes the mere mention of Polish culpability for the murder of Jews during the Holocaust a crime punishable by prison. Jerusalem views the new law as a way of whitewashing Poland's wartime history and has vowed to protect Holocaust survivors and guides who take groups to the Auschwitz concentration camp as part of Holocaust education. Many Poles were angered by Israel's opposition to the measure and unleashed a surge of vicious anti-Jewish propaganda on social media. A television executive employed by Polish state TV said Auschwitz should be labeled a Jewish death camp rather than a Polish one. And far-right groups called for demonstrations against what they described as anti-Polish sentiment propagated by Israel. Jerusalem's ambassador to Warsaw said a wave of anti-Semitic sentiment is sweeping over Poland and that she's been the target of threats.
A top Palestinian official has accused President Trump of trying to create a coup in the PA and said that America's ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, should shut up. Saeb Erekat, the former chief negotiator for the Palestinians, slammed the president's recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and Ambassador Haley for criticizing Mahmoud Abbas's anti-Semitic tirade against the Jewish state. Erekat insisted that Palestinian leadership is not the problem. He also reaffirmed Ramallah's freeze in diplomatic relations with Washington and said that his government plans to appeal Trump's recognition of Jerusalem at the International Court of Justice. Here's what Ambassador Haley told the United Nations.
I encourage anyone who cares about the cause of a durable and just peace in the Middle East to read President Abbas's speech for yourself. A speech that indulges in outrageous and discredited conspiracy theories is not the speech of a person with the courage and the will to seek peace.
The Trump administration is reportedly reconsidering its acceptance of the contested criteria for Palestinian refugees. Palestinians are the only group that counts their descendants as refugees and the only people with a refugee agency dedicated solely to their plight. Israel has long argued that the Palestinian definition of refugee is actually a tool used to perpetuate the problem, and that the United Nations should use the same criteria to define a Palestinian refugee as it does all other displaced populations worldwide. Palestinians demand the right of return for millions of refugees as part of any future peace agreement with Israel. This inflated number is calculated by counting several generations of Palestinians rather than the thousands of Arabs who were actually displaced during the 1948 War of Independence. Israel sees the right of return of millions of Arabs to the borders of its tiny country as a security threat and has contested this point throughout the negotiations.
Iceland is considering legislation to ban the Jewish practice of circumcision. Reykjavik is reportedly debating making circumcision a crime punishable with up to 6 years in prison. The bill calls the Jewish religious obligation a violation of children's rights, which must be categorically banned. Critics say this is just the latest example of state-sanctioned anti-Semitism being enacted across Europe.
Hundreds of U.S. soldiers were deployed to the Holy Land for a large-scale joint exercise with Israeli forces. Operation Juniper Cobra simulated an attack on the Jewish state in which thousands of missiles are fired on civilian areas. This marks the 9th major joint exercise with the two allied armies. Unfortunately, this mass rocket fire simulation is necessary to prepare for a real threat that Hezbollah poses along Israel's northern border. The Iranian proxy army has vowed to destroy Israel and is believed to have up to 150,000 medium and long-range missiles pointed at Israeli towns and cities. In addition, Hezbollah has a 50,000-man army, most of whom have been trained in guerrilla warfare by Tehran.
Israel's Council for Higher Education has announced that Arab enrollment in Israeli universities has increased 78% over the past 7 years. Arab students now make up 16% of undergraduates at Israeli colleges, and Arab enrollment in graduate programs has doubled since just 2010. The Israeli government invested $38 million in the integration of Arab Israelis in higher education, and Jerusalem has announced that it will extend the program until the year 2020, investing an additional $294 million to further increase Arab participation in Israeli universities.
2 Jewish students at San Francisco State University have filed a discrimination suit alleging they feel threatened and alienated from campus life. This is the second suit filed against the university for anti-Jewish discrimination in the past year. Jewish students claim they are afraid to wear the Star of David or a kippah head covering on campus and that they face racist slurs and epithets. The complainant said the school has a long documented history of institutionalized anti-Semitism and has allowed demonstrations that equate Jews with Nazis and baby murderers. The students filed their complaint with the Superior Court of California for the County of San Francisco, arguing that the school has failed to address the concerns of Jewish students on campus regarding their rights and physical safety.
The famous Louvre Museum in Paris has opened an exhibit displaying works of art that it knows were stolen by the Nazis. 31 paintings are on display in 2 showrooms of the museum in an effort to find the legitimate beneficiaries of the stolen property. The Louvre is in possession of 292 paintings that were looted by the Nazis during World War II. And the head of the paintings department at the museum said that they are displaying these pieces so that beneficiaries can see the art, declare that it belongs to them, and officially ask for its return. The museum says that it hopes that the display will draw attention to the matter and help to raise public awareness.
South Africa is facing a serious drought and is preparing to begin water rationing. Unfortunately, the crisis could have been avoided if the country had not capitulated to an anti-Israel boycott. In 2016, South Africa made the decision to boycott Israel's participation in a water crisis conference. BDS activists praised the move at the time, saying that Israeli water technology is not unique or special, and it accused the Israeli ambassador of exploiting the water crisis in South Africa for his own publicity. Now, 2 years later, the city of Cape Town is bracing for a shortage and will likely become the first developed city to run out of water. Israel is a world leader in water preservation, desalination, and wastewater recycling. It has helped drought-ridden countries throughout the world to purify drinking water for consumption.
Researchers at the University of Haifa have deciphered one of the most cryptic of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Scientists pieced together more than 60 fragments of a deteriorated parchment describing the religious sect's observance of a 364-day calendar year. Their research exposed 2 holidays observed by Jews during this period that are not mentioned in the Bible, but are noted in the Temple Scroll of Qumran. These are the celebrations of wine and oil, which are observed 50 and 100 days after the New Wheat celebration of Shavuot. Researchers said that the Qumran calendar solves many of the problems of the Jewish lunar calendar and that it is perfect. The scroll has numerous mentions of concepts and expressions that appear in much later texts, proving that these ideas were discussed by Jewish scholars before the Second Temple period. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful sunny day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. My guest today is Yael Avadia. She's the CEO of the Future Initiative. Yael, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Yael, tell our viewers a little bit about what is the Future Initiative.
Future Initiative, Yozmot Atid in Hebrew, was established to reduce the gap in the Israeli society by empowering and underprivileged women and help them and support them to establish their own micro business and achieve financial independence. We provide every entrepreneur who participates in the program a full package of support that include business training, 1 year of mentoring by volunteers, a small loan that help them to start a business, expert consulting and networking, and many benefits that help them to achieve successfully in their own business, and all this support with no charge.
We're very proud here in Israel that we have gender equality, the equality between men and women, that we have equal access. Even in Israel, women have a higher education in most cases than men on average. Why is there a need for this organization?
What we saw that women maybe have a better education, but don't have the same opportunity and the same courage maybe to do and enter into business world. We believe that every woman have the same opportunity, that if she want to change her financial situation and to realize her dream, so we can help her. We just want to be with her, believe in her, and support her to achieve financial independence.
We've seen a great amount of women reaching the highest ranks in the political office. So we had the Prime Minister, Golda Meir, who was a woman. The head of the Bank of Israel currently is a woman. The head of the Supreme Court is a woman. What do you think is the future of women in business in Israel?
What we realize that just 6% of the businesses in Israel are leading by women, and we want to see more and more women run into the business world. We think it's a very good opportunity to stand by their own and be proud of themselves.
Two sectors of society in Israel where women aren't as integrated into the business world are the ultra-Orthodox sector, the Haredi sector, and the Arab sector. Do you have any initiatives specifically for these two sectors?
Yes, of course. We are working with all sectors of Israeli society, and like you said, we saw that the Orthodox, the Haredi women are very it's like they was born into this world of business world, very small initiative, but they are doing great improvement. And also the Arab, and we are working with them. We also provide them the same program that we provide to everyone, and we see a very good achievement of this sector. And also, of course, all other sectors in Israel, Jewish, Orthodox, secular, Bedouin, Druze, everyone. We believe, like I said, everyone have the same, we want to give everyone the same opportunity.
We're here in the Middle East, and we're very proud that we have equality between men and women, but it'd be amiss to mention that in the Middle East, that's not the case. Women are treated as second-class citizens in a lot of the countries around here. Is there anything we can do here in Israel to be a light onto the nations to help with the women issues in those countries, or is it something that's very designed to help in Israel?
I think it can be all over the world. Even we have a special program here in Jerusalem that we lead 25 women in East Jerusalem and 25 women in the west of Jerusalem, and we see the same thing at the west and the east, because the same problem, the same fears, but we can see that every woman that want to change her life and have a dream can do it if she have the motivation and she want to do it, so she can do it.
Yeah, there are literally tens of millions of people watching the show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I want, first of all, that every woman that hear this message, that have the courage and do it by her own, and stay, and if she want to change her life and change her financial situation, so just do it. Find people that can believe in you and do it. And the second, that we all here would like to have more support from everyone in the world. Everyone can help and join our vision and help us to help more and more women in Israel.
Thanks, Yael, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Hello and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayesod. I'm Eliezer Moody Sandberg, World Chairman of Keren HaYesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. It was foretold that the children of Israel would return to their land on the wings of eagles. This is why it was so important for Keren HaYesod to support the establishment of Israel's first airline. I hope you enjoy. God bless you from Jerusalem.
The divine promise of bringing the children of Israel to their land was given to Moses at the foot of Mount Sinai. I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to me, as it is written in the book of Exodus, is a prophecy that has sparked the immigration for 3,000 years. And with the establishment of the Zionist movement and the State of Israel, it has begun to be fulfilled. Eagles made of steel of El Al Airlines have taken to the skies of the Holy Land, carrying with them hundreds of thousands of new immigrants to Israel. They have come from Yemen and Iraq, from North Africa and Ethiopia, from Russia and Ukraine. El Al, Israel's flagship carrier, was established with the support of the donors of Keren HaYesod, a global organization authorized by the Israeli government to raise funds for Israel's most important priority projects. Most urgent is the task of bringing Jews to Israel from countries of distress where they face danger. Just after Israel's establishment, nearly 50,000 Jews were brought to Israel from the ancient Yemenite Jewish community. In 1951 and 1952, more than 130,000 Jews from Iraq were brought home to safety in Israel. El Al Airlines was a key player in these airlifts and in waves of immigration since. Perhaps no one better epitomizes Israel's immigration story than Aryeh Oz. He was accepted into the pilot school of the Israel Air Force and earned his pilot's wings in 1956, and after completing his military service, joined El Al Airlines. He returned to the Air Force in 1991 to fly a jumbo jet taking Ethiopian Jews home to Israel in Operation Solomon.
We were about to evacuate 14,500 Ethiopian Jews from Addis Ababa to Tel Aviv. I flew a 747. We had 760 seats, and I sat on the floor between the seats. We had 1,087 souls on board. I said it's our obligation as the Jewish people to bring everybody to Israel. I felt so happy, that I took part in an operation like this. When we descended and came over Jerusalem, there was not one person in the cockpit who had no tears in his eyes.
For nearly 100 years, Keren HaYesod's vision has turned the dream of the return of the Jewish people to Israel into reality and remains at the center of efforts to sustain and develop a flourishing Jewish homeland in fulfillment of biblical prophecy.
Every time that when I made my walk around in order to see that the aircraft is serviceable, I always looked up and saw the Star of David and said to myself, gee, I'm flying El Al. This is El Al. This is Israel. This is the Jewish people.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
Unruh, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, is the only UN agency that handles one group of refugees specifically. All other refugees in the world, millions upon millions of refugees, including those from the war-torn Middle East, are handled by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. but Palestinians are completely different. Only Unruh recognizes Palestinian refugees from 1948. They are the only refugees in the world that are still recognized as refugees, even though the numbers of those surviving from the 1948 War of Independence for Israel are probably a couple of hundred, maybe a couple of thousands at most, but according to Unruh, there are 5.2 million Palestinian refugees in the world. And why? Because Unruh inflates the number of Palestinian refugees, 3 times the number counted by Lebanon. And then Unruh alone, among any refugee organizations, recognizes a Palestinian refugee status that is passed on from parents to children, children to grandchildren, grandchildren to great-grandchildren unto the 5th generation. And this is how Unruh manages to perpetuate an Arab-Israeli conflict, but not only perpetuate it, but also create almost insurmountable obstacles to ever overcoming that conflict, because in Unruh schools, and there are hundreds of Unruh schools in Gaza, in Judea and Samaria, and throughout the Middle East, Arab children, Palestinian children are taught to hate the state of Israel. They are taught that the state of Israel has no justification, has no legitimacy, that the only way that this conflict will ever end will be with the erasure of Israel from the map of the Middle East, Israel's destruction. And because of that, it is of the utmost importance that U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, has gone on record saying that the United States plans to defund Unruh. Already, the United States has cut back more than half of its donation to Unruh, and America is the largest donor country to Unruh. By doing that, America has made a material contribution to ending the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and to bringing stability, we hope, back to the Middle East.
Lift up your eyes and look around. All your children gather and come to you. The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Anti-Semitism threatens many of the Jews. We must rescue them before the window of opportunity slams shut. Bless Israel by supporting Keren Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible.
Let us bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elrom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.